Hello there, my name is Michael Maynard and welcome back to Gorilla Picking. Now, the lock that you see in front of you here is a thing called a Folger Adam Mogul. And my god, this is a fucking enormous lock. Now, just for the sake of argument, gentlemen, I will show you, that's a normal follower. Okay, that's the size follower that we use in all of our locks. It's 1/2 inch diameter. The follower that I'm going to need to use to pull this thing apart, I needed to cut the handle off of a broomstick. Okay, so there is the normal one and there is the diameter follower this thing takes. I know that you've got no sense of scale while I'm holding it, okay, but trust me when I tell you, this thing is immense. Now what's it used for? Well, it's used for prisons. So the Mogul is a standard size lock that is used in custodial facilities of all kinds. They come in lots of different flavours, lots of different manufacturers, lots of different pinnings, but these days almost all of them are made by ASSA Abloy in one way or another. ASSA supply a whole lot of correctional places. This one is about 30 years old, so we can't really see the date that well on here, but I have another one of these which came from the same batch, which is dated 11th month of 1988. So I think this one is probably about 30 years old, about the same sort of date. Now, there are a couple of really interesting features that this lock has. First thing about it is that it actually just relies on its massiveness, its physical size, for the security. So the internal workings of this are not terribly complex. It is simply a 5-pin lock. This particular one has got 4 standards and one absolutely massive mushroom spool, which you'll see later on when I disassemble it. But the pinning in here isn't terribly difficult. What they have done though, they rely on incredibly tight key control. So this one was taken out of a jail in one of the Carolinas, north or south, I can't remember which one. And while the locks are often sold off by prisons once they've been finished using them, the keys never are, and the correctional facility will destroy the keys before it sends these things out. So not complex internal workings, but very tight key control. And the other thing about this is that because it's so massive, because it's so solid, it is virtually impervious to physical attack. So once we get into this thing, you'll see that there are a couple of big bits of drill protection in there, and the pins themselves are absolutely monstrous bits of steel, and there is absolutely no way that you could force this core. You could not attack this core with a torque attack. So that's a couple of really interesting things about the security. Now, another thing that I need to tell you about is that this lock, or this type of lock anyway, is designed with a thing called a master ring. Now, this is a different system of master keying from the norm, and I will, excuse me, I will describe this to you guys in another video, but the guts of it, the essence, is that we've got the core of the lock here, so that's the bit that takes the key in the normal manner. Then there is a floating ring, so this is a sleeve that is floating in the lock, and then there's the lock body itself. Now what that means, it means that you can master key this without losing a whole lot of security, okay? But the other thing that it means is that we've got 2 shear lines to work to, and what you need to do when you're picking this thing is pick all 5 pins to the one shear line. So in this case the operating shear line is the first one, and this lock gives very weird, very interesting feedback. When you get to the correct shear line, it gives one kind of feedback, and when you're picking, you've got the pins setting at the different shear lines, it gives another sort of feedback altogether. It gives kind of muted feedback. So that's the brief overview of this lock, guys. What I'm going to do now is mount it up in the vise, pick it, and then we'll strip this thing down and show you some of the internals. So back in a second, gents. Okay guys, well we're back, and you will notice that we are using a slightly different device today for a couple of reasons actually. Just if I zoom out here you'll see I'm using this Dremel one which is affixed to the table, partially because this lock is so big I physically can't get it in my little triangular vise, but secondly because my little triangular vise is away for repairs in any case, so the locks I'm going to pick over the next little while are going to be in this thing here. Now, in picking it, we have got a couple of just straight out physical technical challenges. The first challenge is just the size of the keyway, and that is the thickest top of the keyway tension wrench that I've got. That's the Sparrows one in 050, so it's 50 thousandths. Now, if you try and put that thing in there, it just rattles around like you wouldn't believe. So I found the only real way to tension this thing up is to actually have the tension wrench across like that, which I know looks pretty ugly, but it does work. The other issue that we've got is that you can't, you kind of have to pick from the bottom of the keyway here, not that you really want to. So even though this is an absolutely massive lock with a massive keyway, I'm actually going to be using quite a narrow pick. So I'm using a Peterson number 7 in 18 thousandths, and again we're going to be going from the bottom of the keyway. So let's put a little tension on there and let's get into this thing. Pin 5 is so far in that it looks like I've broken my pick. It's right down the back there. So we get a little click out of 5, 4, if I can ever get onto it, is binding, get a little click there, 3, nothing much happening, 2, and 1. Okay, I have messed this up, gents. I'm getting the kind of feedback here that tells me that I have already got pins at different shear lines. The feedback's all mushy, so we're going to start again with that. Okay folks, well let's see if we can get into this thing on take 2. Light tension, a little tiny click on 5, 4 is binding, aha, okay, just got a little click and a little turn on 4, 3 is the big mushroom, that moves a little and just stops. Now 2 and 1 are both standard pins, but they actually both counter rotate a little, and I really don't know why here. So we're getting counter rotation on 2. Click and a turn, that's 2 set. 1 is now going to do the same thing. So again, a little bit of counter rotation, you watch this. There it is. And click. Okay, I think we are now just 1 mushroom away from having this open. So let's just check down the back. 5 nothing, 4 nothing, 3 counter rotating, and we're open. Okay, that was bloody difficult. Those pins, honestly and truly, they really just want to go to those different shear lines, eh? It took me some considerable time to get that worked out. There's our absolutely massive follower. Okay folks, well there is the pinning on this thing. As you can see, the pinning is quite different to a normal size lock. We have got, for a start, ball bearings in there, as well as the standard key pins. So those ball bearings act to reduce friction on the key, because the idea is that the key's going to be going in and out of this thing a lot, so you want to reduce wear. Here are the key pins, so these things here, and just for the sake of comparison, there is a normal size key pin. Okay, so these things, they're just absolutely massive. In fact, if I just grab some calipers, I haven't done this yet. They are damn near 4 mils in diameter. And a standard key pin is 2 and a bit mils in diameter, so you can see that there is absolutely no way that you're going to force 5 of those across the shear line and shear them off by brute force. Now here are our top pins. Here is this mushroom pin, and again, absolutely monstrous. Let's put the standard key pin next to it. So you look at the size of that thing, it is just huge, and picks very weirdly actually. So you get no turn on the core at all as you go through this, but you're picking it basically like a standard pin, and then you just get a tiny bit of a false set, and then a kind of a massive bit of counter rotation as you go over this lip here. Very odd thing. In terms of drill protection and in terms of the core, that's probably, there we go. Okay, so that's what the keyway looks like, and I'm just looking to see if I've got another key line around. I haven't, but trust me when I tell you, that is huge. 5 big chambers, 2 bits of drill protection there, another one there, and another one on the side here. So there's drill protection all over this thing. You will not be brute forcing this lock. So there we go, gentlemen, a fascinating wee lock. I really enjoyed picking that. The interesting thing for me is that once I had picked this thing, you saw that with a couple of these chambers, the drivers were still actually in the core. So in order to pick this to the operating shear line, we actually needed to leave some of those drivers actually in the core, which I think is absolutely fascinating. 5 is a good example. So if I just put all this back together again, here's the ball bearing in 5, here is the key pin in 5, and here is the top pin in 5, and you can see that that is, for the operating key anyway, a 0 lift pin. If you pick that up out of its little chamber, then what's going to happen is that you're going to foul that shear line, and you're never going to get that open. So 0 lift pin for the operating key on chamber 5. Really interesting stuff, eh? So there you have it, gentlemen. Please leave some comments in the section below. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about that one. In another video, not this one, we will talk about this thing here, the master ring, and how it works. But I think you guys can see, just from the way that these pins here were all in the core when we picked it, you can see the idea of how this thing works. So leave the comments below. My name's Michael Maynard. There's the biggest follower you're going to see, and this is Gorilla Picking.